And we're live. It is Saturday, October 17th, 2020, 5 o'clock p.m., and I want to tell you a tale of two technical failures related to yesterday's show, one of which I'm afraid is entirely my fault. I went 203 episodes without forgetting to bring in the audience. The 204th episode, that would be yesterday. Somehow, I don't know, things got busy. We were getting Dan Kleidman on the show. And there's that part where you have to start Crowdcast and go live on Crowdcast. The thing I have never once forgotten to do. I did forget last night, and it wasn't for 7 minutes that till I was reminded by Kate, who noticed in the Crowdcast audience saying, "Hey, what's up here?" that we had been doing 7 minutes of show. I think it was audible on YouTube because I went live on YouTube. So the YouTube people could hear it but not see it. And our poor Crowdcast audience could neither hear it nor see it. It was a great introduction, and it has now been erased by me, even the audio, because of the second tech failure, which was, I don't know whether it's YouTube's or Crowdcast's, but this one's not mine. It has also never happened before. It involved Crowdcast sending the wrong video, the right audio, but the wrong video. So when I finally did go live on Crowdcast, the video it transmitted to YouTube was only the image of Kate. No matter who was talking, you had live action shots of Kate sitting there listening intently to Dan Klein. Or occasionally, Kate would, of course, ask a question because she is the co-host. But that was kind of the only shot you got. No matter, it was like
and I'm
live
like
Kate
scratching
reaction.
my nose and like, oh God, it's awful. Like, you remember when I told you that I don't ever go and look at like the videos of myself or whatever? I would never have known, but like a couple of people started adding us like in Twitter that they like, and I got up. We can talk about our respective not being able to sleep early this morning stories, but I got up at like 5 or something to like go to the bathroom, and I looked at my phone and I was like, oh my God, like I don't even want to go and look what this is, but I did for like 5 seconds, and I was like, Ben has to take this down. And I was like, I don't like deleting the record. We can put something else up.
No,
like
no,
the Crowdcast.
we put up the
We did.
Crowdcast video. So now, for those on YouTube who missed actually seeing the face of Dan Kleidman, or for that matter, the face of me,
although you faded into black by the end of the
yes,
night.
And I did have that awesome fade to black thing going on, which is not going to happen today because we are back at our normal time. But yesterday it did happen. So for those who want to rewatch the show in all its action and actually see the people who were on it when they were talking, you can go to the YouTube page and see the pristine one. And for those who want to hear for the Crowdcast people who never got to hear the introduction, I think you might be screwed on that. The introduction may be gone. We did the recap of it. I told the nasty story about Dan Kleidman and how he acquired the nickname. Actually, that's not how he acquired the nickname, the duplicitous bastard, but it did reinforce it. Yeah, so that's yesterday's show story. We are not allowed to have fun anymore, and we're not even allowed to get the tech right. But in lieu of fun, it's just us.
I love Just Us Saturdays. I just, I don't know. I look forward to them, even though cheers, Ben.
I want to say that my wine matches the leaves in back of me.
Is it orange? Are you drinking orange wine?
It's a rose. It's a very light rosé. So it actually, you can't quite see it, but it actually does match the foliage, and it was chosen
it looks really
for
pretty.
that reason.
Oh, that's perfect. This is a $10 bottle of red wine that I got yesterday
Yeah,
and
this is
drank half up on the
probably
show
about
and
the
drinking the
same.
other half now. Yeah, probably about the same. Um,
It also matches
I'm
the dog
classy.
shirt, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Everything matches dog shirt. Just
all
let's be
things go
honest.
with dog shirts.
Yeah. So, a couple of things I would like to talk about. I'm going to put them up front. One, I kind of want to talk about COVID numbers if we can.
They suck.
We haven't had like, yeah, we haven't had a conversation about it, but like, I just think it would, I just kind of want to like talk about it for a second. And then two, we have some new merch. Obviously, we have to do guests, and I've had a list, a consolidated list sent to me to ease with our selection, and I think it's really great of like people think of like some of our very loyal followers have thoughtfully put together a list of our
A
favorite
consolidated list of people that we haven't had on yet who have been recommended.
or that we've already had on that would be great on certain topics that they want to hear about. So
Excellent.
and so we have
Beautiful.
new merch, we have the COVID talk, we have whatever, and then
All right. Well, why
um
don't you start with a
yeah,
new merch update? And then we can do,
okay.
because the new merch update won't take very long, and then we can have a COVID numbers conversation.
I just would like to have a moment for the fact this is like the first time anyone might ever have paid money for my art. So let's just like have that as a moment. If you consider this art, let's see.
The Lisa
This
Page
is
puppet is fine art.
uh it's fine
It is
art.
fine
Truly,
art.
truly. Um okay. There we go.
Whoa.
This is the coolest tote bag money can buy, in my opinion. And on the other side is this, which is just pretty awesome. There's
That
the
is pretty
inside kind
awesome.
of pocket label. I'm buying like eight of these basically. I love like the styling of like how it still looks like like how they've like printed on the paper bag qualities. I'm pretty sure that was like that stain right there with some French fries or something like that that like got on the paper bag at some point. But in any event, I'm super psyched about this. Many thanks to John Bordeaux and everyone else who made this happen. I think that this might have been Joel's idea too. I think this might have been Joel's mock-up, but I can't completely remember. But anyway, so that's the new
I am,
merch.
I'm going to see Lisa Page uh, on election eve. And so I may just have to give her one of those.
I think that that's perfect. Um, she's been such a good sport about the fact that this looks really nothing like her. But like, I think that that's like, like, but you know, if I had known it would last so long and that we'd still be doing this 205 days later, I would have maybe put a little bit more time into it, but maybe not. So like, who knows? Anyway, so that's the merch news. Thank you again to John. I think this is
Yeah, and
I have
thanks to
two mugs
everybody who's
now.
been working on our merch. It's really,
And
uh,
Lauren, I should also give a shout out to Lauren Roberts has taken over in an amazing way the In Lieu of Fun feed, updated the pictures, tweets out and responds to things in a clever, fun way. I'm super into it. I'm just like thrilled that that's getting done. And then obviously, and then of course there's Michael Fromberger's incredible documentation in our Git page that is just kind of incredible. You can get links to all of the books, where to find all of the books that all of our guests have written, or the articles that we discussed that they wrote. It's just an awesome resource. And there is, of course, the fight to the death over who will be the most frequent guest. I think it's between Tim Miller and Leah Lippman right now. So
interesting.
I
Interesting.
know,
And it's
I know.
so
It's like I know.
I was gonna say, with the election coming up in a few days and the transition, it's poised for a Tim victory. Except that it's also just the beginning of the Supreme Court term, which kind of sets up a Leah victory. So we could have. I mean, maybe we need to have them on together with boxing gloves in a kind of guests gone wild sort of
That would
way.
be fun. I love that idea. So that, well, before we talk COVID numbers, which is depressing, and there might not be that much to say, I have not been listening to the news a ton lately, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. But I'm actually, I'm kind of curious what well, you pick the order we talk about this in. Do we want to talk about COVID stuff and then talk about
Yeah, let's
the
talk
next
about
two
COVID
weeks leading
numbers.
up to the election? Yeah. Okay. I'm shocked at the Europe numbers. They have now surpassed our July and August peak. Uh, they're huge. They're really bad.
Yes.
And I feel like not that many people are talking about it. Like, and the other thing that's kind of absolutely insane, and I know people are talking about this, but like, it's basically not existent in Australia and China and like, and Africa. It depends on where you are in Africa, but like, um, just incredible how management, top-down management, like has been able to get in front of this and manage this crisis in a way that like we just the laissez-faire kind of approach just didn't make happen. The decentralized approach didn't make happen. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like I just was shocked by the graphs I was seeing today.
So, what do the, I mean, Europe and Israel have in common that they handled it initially extremely well, or at least parts of Europe. Some of Europe, Belgium, Spain, Italy, not so well, but UK. But there were parts of Europe, particularly Central Europe, that handled it really well. Um, and Israel's initial response was pretty fabulous. And then they eased up. And
Yeah.
in
Yep.
Europe, the easing up involved allowing a lot of people to travel. Um, and I think once you do that, you've really got a problem. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think, we had the opposite problem, which is we initially handled it really badly, and we haven't. Uh, we improved a little bit, and then we
Hmm.
let up as well. So I guess it's not the opposite problem. We're the worst of all worlds, um, badly at the beginning, and then eased up, and it's getting worse here too. The numbers here are pretty bad right now, actually. Um,
In what in the US? Yeah.
yeah. Um,
No, and so
we're
here's an
around
interesting
sixty
thought.
thousand new cases a day now.
I haven't seen anything about this, but I'm interested. Wow, is it really 60,000 new cases a day?
50 to
I
60,
mean,
yeah.
the a couple of things. One, we just know so much more about how it's transmitted. We know so much more about treatment, and proper treatment. And like there are like I think that those are huge in terms of like the seriousness that it was. It's still very serious, but the absolute horror show that it was at the beginning in like in May, was I don't know. I feel like we've learned a little bit, so that's at least a positive. But I was gonna say that like, do you think that one of the things about Europe is like they don't have air conditioning? And I wonder, based on some of like the studies that I saw coming out of China about how HVAC indoors spreads or like disseminates the airborne nature of the virus, I wonder if like if in addition to quarantining, if there was something about the lack of kind of like HVAC that is present in like well strictly primarily AC that is just like it's not super ubiquitous. I wonder if that made a difference at all in the summer and now everyone's going inside as it's getting cooler. I don't know.
We don't know.
It's
I mean,
purely speculation. I just like was wondering if people have like seen anything on that. So
I
uh
think a huge amount of it has to do with the sort of communitarian politics of European countries. Their, rates of compliance with rules are much higher, and you don't have major mask resistance movements. Um, it's not a culture war issue the way it is here. And each government is responsible for many fewer people. There's a big difference between having to govern, what's Germany, 80 million people, and
Yeah.
having to govern 300 million
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And, there's a certain degree, a higher degree, though less than people think, of ethnic homogeneity in these countries, higher sense of civic cohesion, a little bit less regionalism, unless you're talking about Europe as a whole. And the moment you start talking about Europe as a whole, they get into squabbling, uh, and they
About
have
its many parts. Yeah.
a very hard time making decisions too. And so, look, I mean, one question that I don't know the answer to is, now that they have this huge bulge, are they any more capable of getting it under control than we are? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. They were certainly more adept at preventing and managing the initial bulge in certain countries than we were, particularly the Germans. Um, but now that it is spreading out of control, and people are sick of being told what to do too. Do they have some of the same problems that we do, or do all of those factors just make for easier governance there? Um, I don't think we know the answer to that question. And then I also don't think we know the answer to the question. We haven't gone through a winter of this in advanced
Oh my God.
industrialized countries. And, you know, um, on the one hand, winter in social distancing is more socially distanced than summer in socially distanced. And, because, right, people are naturally a little bit more separate. But secondly, people spend more time indoors, and that tends to cause spread. So is this all going to be exacerbated by the fact that, more people are indoors more of the time, and, that's really conducive to viral spread? I don't think we know that here. I do know here we don't have the leadership to get it under control.
Yeah.
Um, Europe, I think it varies a lot country by country. Um, and but I don't think we know whether uh, the conditions that favor the virus, which are, once it's reached a certain level of penetration of the community, it's very hard to get under control. It can be done, but it's very hard.
Yeah.
Once are those conditions going to govern, or are we going to learn something about the degree of governance failure that we've had, which is that other countries, when they're in the situation that we're in, actually can manage it? And I don't
Can
like, we won't know that until we see it.
well, I don't want to hijack well, we have a couple of minutes before we really have to get started about planning the show. But I want I would love your advice on this, and like maybe the advice of the audience. Um, like a lot of people, I'm kind of living like a little bit month to month. I have a very comfortable month. I cannot stay in this house forever. It is not my house, and my parents would like it back. And also, I have to teach in person starting at the end of January. At least that's the theory. So, like in Queens, obviously, if that doesn't happen, everything is a little bit different. But we have our apartment, which I've been subletting, a small, like it's a small studio apartment. It's a lovely studio apartment, but it's a small apartment in Brooklyn. Um, we have not been back there since the beginning of March. And I'm basically trying to figure out like what to do. Whether we should get a two-bedroom apartment so that we both have, so like John and I both have space, like to have home offices kind of and pay like, $5,000 a month or whatever crazy price it is to live in New York. Whether we should rent someplace slightly upstate and get a car and I drive in twice a week, like an hour and a half to go to school and teach school. I'm not sure whether it's safe to take Ubers. I've heard that that's usually how I have to get to school because it's not very accessible by bus or public transportation. So it's unless you have a car, like that's how you get there. Um, and I'm not sure I'm super comfortable with that, but there's no parking in New York. Parking has gone completely through the roof because everyone has had the same thought and bought that they don't want to take public transit or Ubers, and so they've bought cars. Um, and so I know everyone's kind of in this boat, but I'm kind of like wondering, how much is it worth going back to New York? How much should we just give up on New York forever? I know there's been like 8 million New York Times, like we talked to 3 people and they're all leaving New York forever, like stories
Well, it's hard to do
over the
that when you
last
have a
couple of
tenure
years.
track job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I can't leave New York. And I like my job. And like I love my students and my school. And so like but I have to teach in person. And so I can be pretty remote. Like I can, so like, even Connecticut is only like an hour and a half away depending on where I go. But like I'm just kind of, well, what do you think I should do? Like should I go? Maybe it's the poll for the day or something. Like I did a decision tree
All
the
right,
other
that's
day
the
and it's just
poll.
kind of like,
Let's
yeah,
let's do
like
it. All right, let's think
what,
of some
like where
options for
should I
Kate.
go?
What the heck should Kate do? Question mark.
Well, for one, I
Go.
can't do anything because what if I put in like a $5,000 deposit in a home in the Hudson Valley or something, like a month plus a month security for a security deposit, and then like I don't have to teach in person after all because there's a huge COVID outbreak and I can just stay here until May and like clear out in May and make those decisions then. But I feel like every decision is like 1 month or 2 months or just a couple weeks out. It's terrible. Um, I don't have Evan just asked if I have an option to do virtual. I can teach upper level classes virtually, and I am teaching them virtually. But you have to teach, we're teaching 1L classes in person, and I'm okay with that. Like, I kind of get that, like, it's part of the experience. Um, and everything else. There's PPE. There's like a lot. I'm not going to get into the details of how they've done it, but so far there are no cases at the law school. It's been worked really well. The students feel like they're getting um, a good a good read on their first year of law school. But anyways,
All right, so here
yeah.
are the options I'm proposing. Go back to her apartment in Brooklyn. Get a place right near St. John's in Queens. Tell her parents she's
Oh,
not
yes.
leaving and stay in the house. Um, uh,
I can't do that when well, yes.
um,
I have I
I could
can't do
I
that
could
one. That one, but yes.
I could make a property rights joke here. Um,
Adverse possession joke.
yeah, you could engage in
It's not adverse because there's no hostility. But
well, it would be if she wanted you to
yeah,
leave
I
and you
know.
refuted
It's
to. It could get hostile real fast, Kate. Um,
Yeah, oh my God, it's so true.
uh, um,
Yeah,
refuse to
so I
teach.
wouldn't refuse to leave, but I should just like wait until the last possible minute, basically. And then like if there's a bad COVID outbreak, refuse to teach in person and teach from Cape Cod. Or and then like that, but like I'm interested in like if I go back to my apartment, how long do I wait in my apartment before I decide that it's like I can't live in a studio apartment with 2 people who are both working from their apartment and doing multiple video calls? I don't know. I just have no
Well,
idea.
I mean, at a minimum, you should get a bigger apartment in New York.
Well, right, but why? Why wouldn't we just go and get a bigger apartment
You
in
should
like
get
the
a
Hudson
mobile
Valley?
home and
I should
just
get a mobile home. That actually, what about one of those really cool houses that people build on the back of their pickup trucks with like the
yeah. So
roofs, the little
I have
roofs?
I have been fantasizing about a RV and just running lawfare from around the country and doing in lieu of fun on patchy Wi-Fi on a wherever I can pick it up for months. And I think this is the solution. You can just um, live in a the nearest campsite to Queens, somewhere out on the island, and just drive
I
your
shouldn't.
house to work.
Well, the thing that I haven't said is that like there is like a
I'm
gym and
adding
all this
mobile
other.
home. I'm adding mobile
Okay,
home to the.
but you know what your mobile home makes me think is like basically I should just live out of my office for 2 days a week and then drive back to Cape Cod or something. That's just like,
Let's add that
anyways.
too. Um, live
But like but most my
out of
parents and like most
office.
people think we should do
Gross.
like the living in Queens, but it's not a nice area. It's not like it's not a very there aren't a lot of options in the around that area in Queens. That's why there's so many dorms. It's a dorm town
Well,
or a
what about
dorm
if you? I
school.
mean, like a few miles out, you're in Inner Long
But
Island.
you wrote gross next to the live out of office. Why is that so much worse than living out of a mobile home? Like I literally just said that I was going to build a house in the back of like a pickup truck cab. Like and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's normal." But not living out of your office where you have a couch. Like there's like and heat. Like and a
No, but there are
bathroom.
all kinds of other people around. It's you.
Are there though? Are there? That's actually like the question.
You
Are
know,
there any
you
more?
know, there are some law students who
Or
are
is it
like
kind of like,
secretly living in the stairwell.
oh my God, totally. And like maybe we'll all find each other, but it's going to be like Baisley, like the mixed up files, Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler, while they all live in like the Museum of Natural History under the sheets. That's going to be like, it's like me and there's like, it turns out there's like 10 other students doing it too. And we'll all like bump into each other at 5 in the morning at the bathroom, like with our toothbrushes. Like it'll
Yeah,
be really
exactly.
awkward. Yeah.
I
I
think
hope no
I
one says
think
this to my dean.
adverse possession is totally winning the poll though.
Yeah, I think I have to stay here until the last minute. I won't tell my parents that that's what everyone voted.
Uh, uh,
Oh God, there's
they're
no good
watching, of
answer. The
course.
answer to this question. Yeah, no, no, they're not.
You can come stay at
They
the
never
cabin in the
watch.
woods, but it doesn't get you any closer to.
It's very sweet of you, but yeah, there is heat in the Cape Cod house, and we just stacked 2 cords of wood, and so we are okay for a while. But yeah. Anyway, should we talk about planning the show?
Yeah. Do we have anything scheduled for this week?
Yeah, we have Brian Beutler on Friday.
Brian Beutler on Friday. All right.
And that's it, I think.
Okay. So we've got.
Um,
So whose mystery guest is tomorrow? Is that yours or
you,
mine?
it's
Oh,
you.
I guess I should plan a
Um,
mystery guest.
it's definitely you. And then we have the requests go like this. People want Bart Gellman back to talk about Snowden. Margaret Taylor on the SSCI report. Um,
Margaret Taylor's
and
already
then
been on about the SSCI report.
I was just gonna actually, yeah, I was actually gonna say that. So I was like, I just read that. I was like, huh, that already happened. Unless people think that there's like a lot more to say. But lawsuits over the emoluments clause, what can we do? Basically nothing. Um, Steve Vladek about the shadow docket. That could be fun. More national security. We haven't had Steve on for a while. He's awesome. More national security specific, and not that a Margaret Taylor isn't awesome. I would have her on just to like shoot the
Wait a
shit.
minute. John
She's
Bordeaux
amazing.
says this is not today's list. It was 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
oh, then wait, then oh, whoops.
I like the idea of having
Oh,
Steve tell us on the history of the conservative legal movement.
yeah. I
Alice,
don't
I have
understand.
invited Nate Silver repeatedly, and he doesn't even deign to respond to my tweets.
Wow, that does seem fair. No, not that he hasn't responded to you, but that like Nate is like, why is there fruit fly around? Ugh. Anyway, this is okay. So okay, wow. Okay, there's a whole bunch of this makes more sense now. Some of these things are things that we've done. I'm confused as to why. I'm sorry that I misunderstood this, John. Um, so yeah, and then Susan Hennessy about how court packing is a good idea. Well, that would be fun. We wanted to do that before anyways because we had Jack on. We were talking about having Quinta and Susan on. I would love to have Susan on talk about it. Do you think she has time this week, or do you think she's too
I'm
busy?
not. I'm not sure. It's not a. She's got some stuff going on. Maybe better to have Quinta on. But I will mention it to them both and we
I
will
know, but
get one
Quinta's
of
so
them.
busy at 5 o'clock, so I feel bad pestering her. But
Yeah,
yes.
we'll make it work with one of them. And I'm but I don't know which.
And people want more scientists about
I'm
COVID, the vaccine, etc. I'm totally all for more scientists. You don't have to argue with me. Um, Andy Slavitt has come up a few times. I would love to have Andy back on to talk about the latest COVID numbers that we were just talking about. Everything that we've learned since Andy Slavitt was last on would be really fascinating. Oh yeah, you should have Quint on tomorrow for your mystery guest. Jonathan Rausch came up. Um, I owe him one more chapter of book notes, and then will feel like I am not a terrible person, and we can have him on, or we could just have him on.
I
But
do think we
anyway,
should workshop his book. I've read 4 chapters of it. You've read the next two, and
yeah,
I think we should like give John notes on his book for an episode. Um, uh,
that would be fun. I'll
um,
see if he's up for it. I'll ping him. Um,
I do not know
I
Zainab, although I would be uh, happy to meet her. Um,
There is some
I'm
big
still
news
getting
coming
over
out
the fact
on.
that Anne Kay is Anne Kornhauser.
I know.
That's like still blowing my mind. Um,
I feel like a jerk because she emailed me and I just didn't know that she like. But
yeah, that she
anyways,
was like
um, yeah,
she was like at Legal Times, like I want to say 3 years left, probably 2 or 3 years before I got there. She was one of the people that my editors always said, when Anne Kornhauser was here, dot dot dot, it was always something good that we were supposed to live up to.
there is, and we don't have to do something about this, but in light of the huge New York Post story and what it's just like spinning, excuse me, spinning and spinning and spinning. I do know that there is going to be oversight board news next week. We could devote a day to that, if you
Well,
wanted
which
to. I don't
day
know
is it
what
going to
day
be?
it's. I don't know yet.
So let's plan on staying fluid for oversight board news.
Okay, if
I
you want to,
will,
we don't have to do a show on that either. So,
yeah, happy to. I
okay,
think when stuff happens in our areas, we should always,
kind of
hey,
do a
Greggy.
do
Um,
a real time show. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Um.
Um, so,
So
yeah, and I like the Steve Tellis idea very much, as well as the uh, um, uh, um, there have been a whole flood of ideas that have come through here. Um, uh, um, more demands for Corey Shockey's return. I suspect that can be arranged. Um,
yeah, you should text her.
I can do that. Hey Tammy, do you know where Corey Shockey is these days? Is she in California or in DC? Well, she's even in our time zone. Um,
Great.
uh, all right. Um, let's get out a bunch of invitations.
I'm sending something to Evelyn Duick to see if she wants to talk about oversight board stuff when and if it comes out. I will send some other stuff. Um,
I'm going to
there.
text Corey right now, and I will shoot a note to Steve Tellis.
Um, there is someone else. Oh, I don't know if we should save him till after the election or what people want to do. But there is a lot of clamor for there was a lot of someone mentioned a few months ago, Scott Heschinger, who is kind of a public defender who has a large profile and does a lot of work on basically creating um, talking about reform for prosecutors and district attorneys. And ending mass punishment. And so I was thinking he would maybe be good um, to come on. He is, and like he's been really active in the Black Lives Matters movement, and had a end of July. He had a New York Times op-ed that was great. So I don't know.
I'm
He
game
said
for
he would love
that.
to come on. Yeah. So people interested in him this week, maybe. I'm looking at the chat. Um, okay. Well, then I will ask him, see if we can schedule him. And then Kate Shaw, by the way, had a great time and says that she's happy to do it whenever. So we should just like add the incredible stable of like the strict scrutiny
Yeah,
women
just
to
do
our
strict
like,
scrutiny live.
yeah, they're so smart though. Like they're just so good. Like I feel like I really like learn something from them every time. They're It's just not just talking points. It's just such a great analysis. It's like Dahlia too, obviously, but like um
All right, should we take audience questions? There certainly are enough of
sure.
them today. Okay, so everybody, I want you to go in and read the questions and upvote the ones that you want to hear, because otherwise we always get the otherwise I don't know what people want to know about. So there's like 35 questions in there, and let's so at the top, let's see if Auntie can come in today. He was having trouble with his he was lacking a webcam for a little while. All right, we're going to bring in 4 questioners, just the top 4. There he is.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. Can you
Are you
hear
in?
my voice?
We
Yep,
can. Are you in
you're
Finland?
great.
Yes, I am.
It's
In the
late
cold
there.
one.
How are the
Sorry?
COVID numbers in Finland?
Well, it's gotten worse since the summer, but it's still, I'd say, somewhat manageable. Somewhat.
Wait, you
What's
gave me a hard time about my Sweden flag, huh?
Yeah, I did.
No, I have family in Sweden that's like it's like half Ashkenazi Jew, half Swedish.
Ah,
It's like it makes it very easy. I don't, for some reason, I like to say because they cancel each other out, I don't like lox at all. And so it's kind of like the
right,
food of my people, and then it's also like the food of my people, and then I don't like it. It's not a thing that I like to eat. But anyways,
right.
sorry. I digress.
My
Yeah.
microphone. Right.
So should I go to
what's
my
on your
question?
mind? Sure.
Right. So I feel that the fragmentation of the news delivery apparatus is among the key breeders of unrest, and self-sustaining media bubbles breed more conflict, and it's only made worse by actually targeted misinformation. And at least it seems to me that the education of media critique is wholly inadequate. So, do you think there's any way to correct the situation? Thanks.
When you say fragmentation, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah.
Well, basically that, anyone can get their information from like Facebook or podcasts or radio personalities, and people seem to think that if it's CBS or Newsweek or your average Joe on radio, it's as trustworthy as the next source. So I think
Is the
that's one.
next source like your crazy uncle or your crazy neighbor?
Yeah,
Are you basically, so you're basically saying that because like news is presented as like, here's your crazy uncle's like unsourced take on something, and it's right
yeah,
next to like a New York Times link or like something like that, that like they're
exactly.
considered
Yeah,
like,
But
okay.
I do want to point out that one expression of the fragmentation of media is in lieu of fun. And I'm not
yeah,
terribly
that's true.
apologetic about that.
Yeah,
So um, Kate, do you have thoughts? I know you have thoughts on this subject, so you give yours first, and then I'll give some of mine.
Listen, I think that the news is, I think that there's always been fragmentation. I think there's always been filter, like, I always think there's always been bubbles. Like, if you subscribed to Town and Country magazine, advertisers knew how to target you. Like people, like certain types of people advertising those magazines, you looked at them, that was like what you read. You didn't subscribe to the Weekly Standard if you weren't conservative. You didn't subscribe to like all of these different things. We've had levels of filter bubbles for a long time. I think that their influence is a little overblown. I think we're in kind of a norm settling period. No one, someone drink because I just said norms. I think that's the rule. But
At least
anyways,
you didn't say permission structure.
but I do think that, like, to your point, I actually think that there is, this is what you actually get down to is something that's super interesting and no one is actually talking about, at least in my understanding. And I don't think this was even your question, but I do think it's an interesting one, which is like, I love to hear your take on this, Ben, which is that, like, when people talk about these, like, the lack of, like, the fragmentation of, like, media or news, like, listen, like, the news is still getting to you. And Dan talked about this yesterday. Like, the news is still getting to you. You still have aggregators pulling this all together and presenting it to you in an algorithmic way or in some type of way. It is going to be next to, like, your neighbor's update about their kid's soccer game or like whatever else, or like your crazy uncle's opinion on, like, Barack Obama's like birth certificate or like whatever it is that you're going to have. But like, my grandma used to get chain emails, like, and forward them to me. And that was like in the early 90s, how like all of this kind of craziness kind of like settled out. And like, I just think that we are maybe developing a situation sense for some of this and how to filter it out. And I don't actually know how, I guess I don't understand, like, kind of exactly what the problem is, except that maybe we're seeing something that happened for a long time anew because it's been cast in a new setting. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm not sure I agree with it, though. And here I want to emphasize the 15-year age difference between the two of us, which is that you grew up in a media fragmented era, whereas I still have an adult memory of a time when everybody gathered around the TV at 7 or 7:30 and watched the evening news, and your daily sources of information, depending on where you were limited and were the same as your neighbors unless you made unusual efforts to avoid that. And I do think that had a culturally harmonizing effect on our sense of reality. Now, I don't, as the publisher and editor of Lawfare and somebody who creates podcasts and somebody who, does this, I cannot denounce the fragmentation. I'm a creature of the fragmentation, and I very self-consciously went from writing editorials for the Washington Post to not writing editorials for the Washington Post, but being a creature of that fragmentation. Basically, I like the fragmentation. I think the diversity of voices is good. I think the aggregate expression of truth is better. Like, I think the world in which you can read the Washington Post, but if you really want to dive deep on one of the, subpoenas, you read Lawfare, and if you really want to, I like that. The problem is that, and I'm going to be really elitist here, that a very large number of people don't know how to read, and they don't actually know the difference between, given a choice of information, they don't gravitate to high quality information. So Lawfare has done really, really well, but it's the decimal point is in a different place than how Alex Jones has done. right? And so if you look at the proliferation of good information in absolute terms, it's really cool. But if you look at it in relative terms, we're getting our asses kicked by the liars. And so the problem to me is not the fragmentation, it's the lack of consumer sophistication about information. And I think the platform problem is both an expression of that and an exacerbator of that. So people blame the platforms, but what are the platforms really doing? They're accentuating user choice. So if you are a little bit into, if you're just a little bit curious about QAnon, it feeds you a shitload of QAnon, right? And then, but the initial bad choices are yours. And so I think there is a fragmentation problem, but I also think there are fragmentation benefits. And the question is how to design architecture, intellectual architecture, but also platform architecture that that is not prejudiced toward bad user choice. And that's my
Well, that
that's
like
my gut
paternalistic
about it.
instinct is, yeah, but that paternalistic instinct is exactly, I feel like, how we ended up with like the Silicon Valley people of the world making these editorial decisions for us, or kind of these keep up
No,
or
it's a
take down editorial.
maternalistic instinct.
Maternalistic, like, yes, exactly. Yeah, because there's so many women in positions of power in Silicon Valley. Um, but I do think that well, I mean, I take your point. I think it's actually a beautiful thought about like how local news kind of harmonized, the fragmentation didn't do that. But like, I think not to like, I think your problem is like the Madison problem. Like, it just is like, it is the problem of, on the one hand, I want democratization. On the other hand, how ugly this democratization is, and how like actually on like, and how like how full of corruption, how full of like misthought, how full of disinformation, how full of kind of like lack of study or scientific method, and how full of like um I don't
Look,
know,
if
just like
if
the
if you're
so like
asking
I
me to
just
choose between fragmentation and non-fragmentation, I will choose fragmentation. I
I mean,
vote.
I will too. I mean,
I
so did
voted with my
Madison.
feet on it, and I accentuate it every day. Every day, I try to fragment a little bit more, create new, interesting options for people to consume information. But I also believe in editors, and I also believe in rigorous reporting. And I think the question is how to train readers that and consumers that there's a difference between us sitting here talking about real facts, taking questions and engaging and being willing to say we don't know when that's the answer, and Alex Jones, ranting and trying to sell you vitamins. And that like, if you can't train the populace that those are different enterprises and not all information is the same, then we are fucked.
Yeah. I'm stepping away for 1 second, but please, I can still hear. So go to the next question.
David, the next question is yours.
Okay, well, good afternoon. And I'm interested in both of you answering this question before I tell you my interesting story. But for each of you, what was the news that broke this week that you thought was particularly different, something you didn't expect, something noteworthy?
Sorry, say that again.
So, what news broke this week that you felt was notable, different, unusual, unexpected? It was for you a really big story.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I thought it was very notable that Shane Harris and company reported that the president had been briefed repeatedly on the fact that his personal lawyer was being targeted by a Russian disinfo op, and he did not care. But I didn't find it remotely surprising. and so the adjectives that you use are somewhat in conflict with one another. Like, I thought that was a really interesting and important story, but not because one iota of it surprised me.
Right.
What about you, Kate? What did you think this week was new and different?
Um, oh, you want to know? I have a really good one. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna take me a second to so I would say that maybe you're expecting me to say like the New York Post stuff and everything that happened with that, but that actually didn't surprise me. That was a clusterfuck of bad PR by the tech companies, misunderstanding by lay people and reporters, and then like all of it was kind of like a giant disaster. But I like deeply, deeply loved. I was like, oh my God, like kind of like this is amazing. This is amazing. Caught on camera video, which was that a Zamboni that was cleaning a Rochester, New York ice rink caught on fire in the middle of of cleaning the ice rink. And like, okay, so hold on here, like here's the I'm trying to like come up with I'm trying to
I'm
come
not
up
sure
with
you're going to
the
be
like.
able to share a screen because we've got 6 people on already.
Oh, really? Bummer. Okay. Hold on. Kick David Batts off. David or
Well,
Bots off.
but he
Go away,
wants to
David.
share his answer.
Oh, then share it and then I'll pull up the thing. Tell
Okay.
us. And then
I do like.
you won't regret it. I wouldn't kick you off for anything, but like a flaming Zamboni is like one of the one things.
So this is interesting. My big story of the week was that the country of Egypt was this very secretive court hearings where an entire floor of a federal court was sealed off to hear testimony about the fact that money is coming from the country of Egypt to 45's campaign before he was president. That's super interesting.
No, I
I
hadn't
agree.
heard that.
That was a pretty interesting story, and we finally found out who the mystery subpoena was from Bob Mueller. Yeah, no, I agree that one, and I never doubted that that was a Russian bank. It turns out it was an Egyptian bank. Who knew? All right, share the flaming Zamboni.
Okay, I will do it in a second, but hold on. I'm trying to like get it pulled up. It's taking forever to load.
In the meantime, Daniel,
Thank you.
you're with the blue shirt. This is like a new look. The whole thing is just designed to disrupt my sense of an
Oh wait,
ordered
hold on.
universe.
I think I have it.
Should I go or?
Yeah, go. Keep the
Yeah, go ahead.
conversation going.
Well, I'm curious on your guys' thoughts on the deteriorating relations between Taiwan and China, and how worried are you about China invading Taiwan, say, within the next year?
Well, I gotta say, if I were China, I'd do it in the next 3 months. I mean, you know, you got a crazy person who's actually very confrontation averse in the international arena. You don't have it's going to take a while for Biden to develop a policy to reestablish whatever deterrence we may be able to project in the Taiwan Straits. And I think they're capitalizing on that. And I think they're, given morality and propriety aside, I think given their strategic priorities, there's a lot to be said for that as a way to go. And I don't know how eager they're clearly not that eager for conflict. So some of it is bluster to try to intimidate the Taiwanese. But I take it pretty seriously, and I think there's that's one of the flashpoints of the world, and it's one of the places where if you say where is something really bad going to happen that could lead to a cosmic international disaster with nuclear weapons, the Taiwan Straits is one of those places. And I, I, I take, just as I take bluster on the Korean Peninsula pretty seriously, I take when the Chinese say they are, serious about reunification with Taiwan and, flex their muscles. I am aware that their Navy is now larger than the U.S. Navy. I don't know. What do you think, Kate?
So I haven't followed this at all. I have nothing intelligent to share. But I do have a video of a Zamboni catching fire.
Which we're
And
gonna
here we
let's
go.
just change the subject right to that.
Okay. Let's hope that this. I'm pretty sure this is the ice rink where I learned how to ice skate.
How good a skater are you? Whoa.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? I would like to note that I thought the guy jumped off this thing. He's still on it. He's still on it and steer. And I would also like to note how calm all of these people
I mean, he's
are.
he's still on it because he's on fire. Oh, it's just the sun.
He just takes it back into the thing, and that's it.
Yeah.
But
let him be a lesson to you all when your Zamboni catches fire. Don't jump off. Just drive it back to its parking space. Mike Godwin, the floor is yours.
Hi. So I guess the news story for me of the week is the source of my question, which is that I saw Andrew Weissman interviewed by Nicole Wallace, and he just sort of tosses off that he thinks that Trump is going to self-pardon if he loses, which I have always believed would happen, and which is sort of hard for me to imagine not happening because of who Trump is. And so actually for the last couple of years, every month or two, I sit down and spend an afternoon researching pardon law because I just want to make sure I really have a grasp of it. But I honestly think the president's, remember when the president was going on a frolic of pardons, just pardoning people right and left? I believe he was doing that to normalize the idea of just issuing pardons for, Blagojevich or whoever. And I think it's actually quite.
Oh my God, I forgot that happened.
Yeah, no, it seems like 10 years ago now, right? But Blagojevich, really, Blagojevich, the only reason to pardon Blagojevich or Scooter Libby is just to say, well, I'm going to pardon criminals. I'm okay with it.
Right.
And so I think it's going to happen. I think, if everything that we see in the numbers is true, we think there's a good chance that the president loses this election. If he's a lame duck, will he pardon himself? That's where I would put my money. Not because it solves all his problems, but because it doesn't help with state cases, but because that's kind of who he is. But I want to add one thought on top of that and see what your reaction is, which is that if Trump self-pardons, that might actually be a good thing because it means that he has no Fifth Amendment privilege as to federal charges. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I disagree with that, actually. I think
well, yes, Fifth Amendment privilege as to state charges, clearly.
No, I think if he self-pardons, it almost compels the federal government to indict him.
Yeah, so Ben, what I would say is if he pardons before an indictment, then the question of federal government standing to indictment is a little trickier, I think.
No, I don't think so. So,
all right.
First of all, he can't wait until there's an indictment to pardon himself because he won't.
Because they won't indict him until after he leaves office, right?
Exactly. And so, if there's a federal case against him and he wants to pardon preemptively, he has to do it while there's no case. Now, number one, if you are the new Attorney General and you were content to let sleeping dogs lie with respect to past possible presidential criminality, but the cost of doing so is now that you establish the principle that the president can pardon himself. I would think that would change your calculation pretty dramatically, and you would feel like, wait a minute, if there's a case that we might otherwise have not brought, we might now need to bring it simply to establish that the president is not entitled to do this. And so I would think that would make people in the Justice Department think about what law was being created if they don't indict. Now that doesn't answer the question of whether there's an indictable case. And as you say, of course, his principal vulnerability seems to be from the state of New York. So maybe the answer is, but I would look, if I were Attorney General, which is, da 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 da, it would be, I would be really anxious about the idea that somebody had self-pardoned and there's no mechanism to challenge it other than to indict him and have him plead the pardon and then litigate the validity of the pardon.
Can I just add one thought that I think is really useful in this context, and that's that when Nixon talked to the grand jury after he was out of office and had been pardoned, it's really interesting to read the transcript of that testimony, which we didn't really get to until many years later.
Right.
The transcript was great because you see Nixon knowing that he can't plead a Fifth Amendment privilege, is very careful in his answers not to say anything that would get him.
Right, but on the Fifth Amendment issue, see, I think if the Justice Department does not accept the validity of the pardon,
then they litigate.
Then it is not clear that he doesn't have Fifth Amendment. Right, the Justice Department would have to take the view that he still does have Fifth Amendment rights.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right. We have time for 2 more questions. I guess we have 2 more questioners. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Hey guys, I'm from Rochester, and I didn't expect the first story from Rochester to be a Zamboni on fire, especially given some of the craziness coming out of our city this summer. But that's beside the point. My question relates to the whole ballot harvesting, unofficial ballot drop boxes going on in California right now. There seems to be, a lot of outrage about this, and the immediate thing that comes to mind is the 2018 ballot harvesting effort by the Democratic Party. So I've yet to see any sort of real comparison on the legal differences between the 2018 effort by the Democrats and the 2020 effort involving the ballot boxes by the GOP. They seem to think they have legal standing to carry on with this. So I was wondering what y'all thoughts are on this, because I'm not sure what to think.
Kate, do you have thoughts on this?
I mean, the general idea, I haven't followed what's happened in California, in particular. Can you give us a little bit of if something happened in the last week beyond I've seen a lot of posts of oh, this ballot box is out collecting ballots. Can we trust this? Is this just suckering people into leaving their ballots? Is that what you're talking about?
The basic outlines is that the California GOP created ballot boxes that look somewhat like the official ones.
Right.
They are they are putting them in places where they think Republican voters might go, like churches and in heavily Republican neighborhoods. California has a law that permits ballot harvesting, but there's some question as to whether it needs to be done on an individual basis or whether you can have sort of mass boxes full of ballots. The California Secretary of State or Attorney General wrote a letter to the party saying that it was illegal, and the party has refused to back down and means to continue to do it. I am not expert in either California law or election law, so take this with a grain of salt. But my impression is, and I don't know who's right on the merits of this. My sympathies are generally with people who want to harvest ballots. I think it's a good thing as a general matter. There are a lot of old people who, are mobility impaired, and people who I think, want to pick up people's ballots for them, assuming all the security measures are observed, I think is generally a good thing. I'm not, I don't know what California rules are about boxes versus people, and I don't want to opine on that. So generally speaking, though, when you do something in defiance of the legal opinion of the Attorney General or the, of the authority of the state, what you risk is legal action by the state. Now, in this case, I think there are potential criminal penalties at issue. But the other thing, the more important thing, since I do think this is probably sort of a dispute within the reasonable parameters of good faith. So like one person thinks their actions are legal and the other, is that the California Attorney General tries to get an injunction and force them to stop. And I don't know what the merits of the law are. I do think the, part of what the California GOP here is doing is trying to say, hey, well, two can play at that game. If you want to let all these liberal groups harvest ballots, we'll be really flamboyant about it. And so, and of course, in the conservative victimology narrative, they get a kind of like they win points by losing here, right? Because they get to say, hey, liberals get to do this and we don't.
I think the Secretary of State have an agreement with the GOP like yesterday or something, so it appears to now be okay.
Oh,
well,
really? So that I haven't heard.
I posted the article in the chat.
Excellent.
The interesting thing that I'm seeing is just that I'm looking at this bill, and it looks like the most recent bill was in 2016 and expanded the law to basically be like from any person, not just a family member, could return someone's ballot, but there had to be some type of signature and like the person still had to know who was handing in their ballot. And the idea is that basically the ballot boxes that the GOP has put up don't meet those requirements because there's no type of like handoff from one person to another directly. And so that's that seems reasonable to me. It also is kind of a funny thing as I'm looking at kind of the legislative history. It looks like Republicans were like totally opposed this bill in 2016 and now are obviously trying to kind of take advantage of it.
Yeah, and that's to Ben's point that I seem to remember in 2018 that the GOP in California was very much upset with this, and that they said in 2020 we're coming out in force to do the same exact thing. And they seem to have taken it to the next level, which I guess is where the issue of legality is falling. But that was really helpful, though. I appreciate that.
Andres, you get the last question.
I didn't actually pose a question, so I'm a bit surprised I'm on, but I just made two guest suggestions. So,
but you put it in the Q&A.
But you suggested Tammy.
Yes,
and they got
upvoted. The State Department and what to do about it seems super interesting. So and she seemed to be
while we have been talking, Corey Shockey has agreed to come on Monday.
Okay, I'll put it on. Great.
I already did. And Corey has written a whole book about how to fix the State Department. As to Tamara Kaufman-Wittes, let's just say Tamara's presence on In Lieu of Fun is a subject of internal discussion at the Wittes household. If people want to tweet their preferences,
so fun.
I would not discourage that.
Oh yes, this is great.
We will be back.
Is it Tammy, Tammy?
She goes professionally by Tamara, but yeah, when she goes by, to the extent she goes by Tammy, she spells it Tammy.
Okay.
We will be back tomorrow with a mystery guest, and you can't trick me into saying who it is because I have frickin' no idea. Monday will be Corey Shockey. Friday will be Brian Beutler. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are wild cards. We will do some things with them. And until then, Kate.
We don't have fun anymore, but we do have flaming Zambonis checked off our bingo card.
It is, you know.
There you
Bye.
go.